Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-host of the Seeds of Tao podcast alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. We're also the co-owners of the Seeds of Tao education platform, an incubator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs, as we sometimes like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we are here doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful Regenerative Business Economies Network, aka regenBEN, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now. We have myself, Emily Prieto, and my husband, Joshua Prieto, today on the podcast.
How's it going?
And we're talking about something super exciting. We're talking about regenerative business economies, but specifically talking about what the regenerative business economy of the future might look like. We're going into Twilight Zone here.
Yeah, so we're going into this is going to be a little bit more of a interactive podcast that we want you to kind of follow along with if you're open to this. And to do that, we're going to have a bit of a crowdsourcing. We want to crowdsource the mapping of the current regenerative enterprise ecosystem, right? So what does that look like? And share that information with everyone. That's the kind of goal that we're shooting for. We're going to talk about that on this episode.
And also how people can use that map. Like, okay, everyone gets on the map, but then what? Who cares? So we'll talk about how that can be super useful for us also.
Yeah. So how can we use this map? Who's going to be using that map? And what that's going to involve. So we're going to dive into that. There's going to be some tools that we're going to cover here. And the mapping experiment that we're taking this adventure on with you is going to use this tool called the Brain.
The Brain.
Never heard of the Brain. It's like a mind mapping tool. And we're basically going to dump our regenerative resource brain, our collective brain as regenerative enterprise builders into this database that's going to show the connections of what the regenerative economy looks like right now and how we can use that to do things with it, right?
Right. We're also going to have the form so that people can enter their data so that we can acquire this crowdsourced data to start putting people into the right places.
And we're hoping this is going to evolve over time. So it's going to be a part of our community platform. You're going to give feedback on this. And that's why this is a little bit more of an engaging podcast episode that you're going to follow along with and hopefully dive into what we're calling regenBEN, which stands for... What does regenBEN stand for?
Regenerative Business Economies Network.
And so it's an acronym. BEN is an acronym for Business Economy Network. And the way that we're going to be able to work together on this is if you go to our website at www.seedsofdao.com.
Tao as in T as in Tom, A-O.
You go to there, and actually it's in the show notes as well. Click on this podcast episode link, right? So in the show notes, you can just grab it there, or you can go to our website. find podcasts in the most recent podcast, episode 112, Regenerative Business Economy episode. You can follow along with us. And there's actually more resources on that show note podcast.
On the blog post.
On the blog post.
That goes along with this.
Yes.
Explaining more with links, how to get into it, get put into the system, all of that, all on the website.
Okay. So we have now talked to you about this. So if you are able to go there, maybe pause this episode and go there.
Or if you're driving, just catch it.
Yeah. Catch it.
Put it on a to-do list to catch it when you're home and available.
Or do it out in the garden, whatever it is. You can come back and you can visit this and be more engaged with this episode in that way. So you'll find in those resources a digital mind map that's we're calling the regenBEN, right? And this is going to be a visualization tool that we'll use to map out the relationships between the regenerative enterprises of the world, right?
Yeah, it's really super cool because not only are we able to map out people by like area that their enterprise is focusing in, but we're also able to get, bioregional relevant, which like has never been done on a broad scale. So we're super excited about this.
Yeah. So what are the possible uses of this is kind of the question that we are presenting to you. And if you can come up with other possible uses for this information, because I think it has unlimited use case scenarios. And applications for having this type of information. But specifically for the Regenerative Entrepreneurial Network, we have some that we want to present here. And that's really what we're going to talk about on today's podcast, is how if we map out together in a crowdsourced way what the regenerative business economy looks like through regenerative enterprises and their entrepreneurs that run them, what types of things can come from that type of mapping exercise.
So one thing that we are thinking of that this map can be used for is to connect the work of impact entrepreneurs that are building regenerative businesses. People always talk about the 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon or whatever. Can we work in 6 degrees or less of the work of another regenerative entrepreneur, right? So often we're talking to people in the think tank, we're talking to people in communities in the masterclass, we're in the community in general, and they're doing work that's so tied to physically where they're at, but also in the field of work, then that people will come to mind like, oh man, I should connect them with da 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 da. Like we just on the podcast on the think tank this last time, there was a fellow that was from Quebec, and I was like, oh, I know someone else in Quebec who's doing really cool things, and I really wanted to connect them. Though I was doing the recording, obviously, because I wasn't able to attend the think tank. But there's all these, you hear people doing all this work. And inevitably, if you're really involved in this regenerative movement, other names come to mind. So, oh yeah, they're doing this thing or they're doing that thing. But how do we really find this common space to connect these people? And that's one of kind of the big opportunities that we're seeing for regenBEN. People able to see who else is in their area where they're working. If it's in agriculture, regenerative agriculture, if it's in natural building, there's these big umbrella categories where it's not necessarily competition. It's really like opportunity for collaboration and support and uplifting each other. And we like to say weaving our work with them. And so that's a really cool potential that we've seen.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, like we can connect in so many different ways. And if you get onto the regenBEN brain, right, there is ways that you can kind of find those interconnections. And because it's a small database right now, it's going to grow and you're going to start to see those relationships. We want to really try to understand what categories matter to you and what ways that you would like to connect to other regenerative enterprises and the entrepreneurs that are a part of them, right? So for example, one of the big things that we really want to connect on, and this is more our desire is, but we've also seen it in other people express this as well, is bioregional, really focusing on like a bioregion and the ecosystems that are involved in that bioregion. the enterprises that are affecting that bioregion.
Yeah, it's like bioregional relevance.
So that's one area. And then Emily was kind of talking about your industry or vertical, whether you're in textiles or you're in a certain food product or, you're a certain type of farmer, right? That all can be grouped together and we can find those connections. And then even beyond that, like we know, like supply chain is a big thing, right? And if we're serving a certain person, but we know, downstream somewhere, we affect this business, we affect this ecosystem, we affect those other things outside of what maybe our typical industry is. And we want to interconnect those, right? And being able to talk with other entrepreneurs can help us to do that.
Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is, because we'll be able, in the brain, we're able to zoom in so closely to these smaller groups, but we're also able to zoom out a little bit so that we can really see the patterns that are existing in regenerative enterprise design on a global scale, on a continental scale, right? Like what is happening in these places? Maybe there's a need for certain places, or maybe there's a surplus in certain places, but it'll be a really kind of eagle-eye view of the regeneration movement from the regenerative entrepreneur side.
Right. So the patterns is a huge part of being able to uncover the possibilities that we can work together. But in the grand scheme of things, like there are actual natural patterns already happening around us that we just don't understand well enough to be able to connect my business to your business to someone else, and really find that kind of circular economy, in a sense that if my waste, if I do have a waste stream that could be beneficial for someone else's enterprise, how do we link up? How do we find what those challenges are, right? And then so that those are some of the ways that we can use those patterns for regenerative enterprise design, right? And then we see that how we might work together and connect to do scaling of those systems, right? So we find out maybe the possible pattern, and then we can start to look and see how those regenerative systems can cross over into other bioregions, into other cultures of the world, and possibly impact and affect at greater scale something beyond the individual bioregion. But maybe you'll find something that's really cool that we're using. We're actually using the bioregions from One World and their website.
Is it One Planet?
Is it One World or One Planet? Okay, that's why we got to pull it up, right?
Check it in the blog post. You'll have the correct link in the blog post.
Exactly. In the show notes, you'll be able to find the actual, and I had it up. So I'm
really quick while Josh is looking that up. I think it's important because people will do. It's important to mention specifically the relevance for this type of tool for the regenerative movement, because people will do industry mapping.
No, it is One Earth.
Right? Oh, it's One Earth. Mm-hmm. My bad. Wait, did I say One Earth or did you say One Earth?
I don't know.
Okay, anyways, it's oneearth.org. Okay, back to what I was saying. I think it's, people will do these industry mapping things, right? Figuring out what businesses are in these industries. But specifically in the work of regeneration, we're all very clear that kind of no man is an island. It's not going to be one business that finally gets the work of regeneration into the mainstream. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be a single individual, a single enterprise, even a single team. It's going to be the woven work of entrepreneurs across bioregions, across continents, really breaking through this edge culture paradigm and really coming into the mainstream narrative of why this is important and how people can get involved. Mm-hmm. So we're using the strength of regeneration. We always talk about, the power of the ecosystem versus monocropping, the power of collaboration. That's really a strength of regeneration. And we're lending to that strength in this tool to help facilitate further collaboration, further strengthening, further sharing of resources and support, further strengthening of the movement, essentially.
And yeah, so that is extremely helpful for us to be able to really truly create a regenerative economy, right? We can't do it alone. There's no single Amazon of regeneration that's going to like take over the world and essentially own the entire market of regenerating our people, planet, and future, right? And nor do we want that. We want to make it more interconnected, interwoven, crowdsourced, and utilizing so many different pieces from the value that each individual enterprise is offering.
It needs to be a global effort.
And even, so working along with the clients that we serve, the communities that we're engaged in, right? And that's got to be something that transcends the barriers that we and boxes that we put ourselves in, right? So one thing, like, what is a regenerative entrepreneur compared, and I'm sure it's not, black and white, you're either regenerative or you're not.
Right.
And in fact, let's be honest, this is more idealistic in a lot of ways, because I don't know, and I haven't really witnessed someone that is 100% regenerative in their enterprise or even in their life, to where, they're not using plastics, they're not using extractive systems.
And that goes with tech too.
Yeah, because we're all interconnected, right?
Right.
And if we're going to make this change and transition, we also got to consider in this map as well as like, well, what level of transition are we in, right? And so that's a really hard question to answer. And so that's why we're needing the help of everybody. We're crowdsourcing this information, right? So on the map on regenBEN, you're going to find a place where you can kind of say what stage of business you're in, and that will kind of share a little bit more about where you're at in your process of building a regenerative enterprise. But there's also a part of like how regenerative do you feel your inputs are? And that measurement is really gray at this point. And that's something that we want to get greater clarity in, is how do we measure each individual enterprise according to, how interconnected and how regenerative they are in the systems that they put into play into their enterprise. And it's something that we don't have the answer for. I don't think anybody clearly has the answer for, but together we can come to that understanding and gain greater clarity through a mapping exercise like this.
Yeah. And I think that, we always talk about, valuing diversity and how we don't want, like, everyone should be growing food, but everyone isn't going to be the farmer, right? So this will be an opportunity for us to highlight the different industries that regeneration is going into, is leaking into, is seeping into, right? More than just land, more than just building, right? Into design, online spaces, even some tech things, the waste-free people, the marine permaculture people, finance, economics, like all these different things that you'll really be able to see. And those areas can be equally valued in the scope of this regenerative movement.
So there's a couple of mentions that we want to take note of, because there's already work happening. And this really is a conversation. I started having this conversation with others in the Global Regenerative Collab. If you're not a part of the Global Regenerative Collab, it's good. Look it up and and find a chance to reach out and connect with another group outside of even Seeds of Tao, right? And start weaving the work of others. But we were having this conversation in the GRC really early on of like, what is this whole, and multiple people were trying to tackle this solution, right? And I still, to this day, talk to others that are like, how do we connect networks together. So like a network of networks.
Yeah.
And how do we connect the work that we're doing? And we were always talking about possibly building some type of map. And some person would start building it. It would get to a certain stage and it would fizzle out. Or I've seen certain people do it certain ways and they're getting a piece of the picture, but not all of it. And what I'm really trying to find is something that we can crowdsource together, right? That's not one person's view of it. We're not trying to make this Seeds of DAO's view of something. We're trying to make this something that we can gain a better understanding all together.
Yeah, we're just holding this space.
It's open space, open source, like you take from this. And so there's others that are out there that we want to also include into this work. One of those is the work that One Earth is doing, right? That we mentioned earlier on bioregions. Because we really, truly believe that if we can work bioregionally as an enterprise or focus in on our impact on bioregions as regenerative enterprises, we can really make some different changes. So when I found oneearth.org and what they're doing to map out bioregions, so their Bioregions 2020 platform that they've got really is a good way that we can come together and focus in on specific bioregions. So we placed those bioregions into regenBEN as categories, right? And they have, first you have your bigger area, right? Like the kind of continental areas. And then it breaks down into sub-realms. And then you have so it starts off with realms, right? You have your realms, you go into sub-realms, and then it goes into bioregions from there, right? And so you'll see that in the regen map. When you're an entrepreneur, you may be directly affecting a bioregion, or you may be supporting a bioregion by supporting the entrepreneurs that are there, like how we're working. But there's also other things. So there was another person that's doing another group that's doing some great mapping.
Let's take a moment for a brief promotional break and talk about the state of our world. There are famines, floods, and fires in our backyards, a global recession affecting our economies, and war and conflict tearing down our relationships with one another. You see it in the news, feel it in your wallet, and talk about it in your social networks. It's hard to think that it doesn't affect you in your personal life and bring you down in your work. Except you want to regenerate our lands, turn our economies into circular ones, and do it in collaboration and community with others. How are you supposed to do that when it seems like everyone's working against you? You're an entrepreneur and you have a business that's going to help us solve these problems and bring these solutions? You're telling me you're going to change people's minds and raise capital for your cause and bring in triple bottom line profits? You must be an optimist, a dreamer, or completely out of touch. Who's going to buy your products or services, take you up on that offer, or help you fund your do-good business? We will. Who are we? We are the Regenerative Business Economies Network, a connected group of impact entrepreneurs, peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenerative enterprise building. Together, we take on the financial and personal risks of building regenerative enterprises. It's all of us together that creates the change we want to see. We must believe in each other and the work we've devoted ourselves to. If you want to be supported and also lend support to impact entrepreneurs like yourself, follow the promotional link in the podcast description or head over to seedsofdao.com and click on Join the Community. With that, let's get back to the episode.
They're building, there's a few people, authors of this work. So there's Matthias, or how do you pronounce that?
Matthias.
You're better with names, pronunciation.
Yeah, this is French. Yeah. Please forgive me, Matthias. Bossonon, maybe?
It sounds right. Laura
Duarte.
And then Dr. Simon Schillenbeck, right? Schillebeek. And then Raphael Alden, who I've reached out to. And we haven't had a lot of big conversations yet on working together on this, but I really like the map that they're starting to build out with others. And like I said, there's lots of people doing this
And we'll link
maps.
to their map that they have going on in the blog post.
And in regenBEN.
And in regenBEN. Yeah.
So they're kind of tackling some of these categories that we're talking about to interconnect businesses and enterprises, regenerative enterprises together. They connect them from the Earth system, right? So the Earth system, the different Earth systems they have here, they have 5 Earth systems: the biosphere, the hydrosphere, the lithosphere, the anthroposphere. Yes, and then the atmosphere. And I didn't really understand the anthroposphere. Man, see, I'm telling you.
There's so many hard words today in the podcast. Anthroposphere.
When I first, I've heard of the Anthropocene, right? And that's kind of where I knew where the word was kind of coming from. But that's the area of or paradigm of that nature kind of is. Well, here's the definition that they have around the Anthroposphere on their categories here. They say shifting the paradigm that nature is separate to humans, redesigning our economy and built environments, and putting local and indigenous communities at the center. That's kind of that space, right? And really, it's the environment that humans, if you actually look up the definition I did a little while ago of this sphere, it's where humans are changing the planet, right? In several ways. So like cities and towns, but we got to understand that we're a part of nature and we got to work along with it as well. So there's that piece. So they are working with those 5 Earth systems, and there are people that are directly like frontline on the front lines of working there. So you got farmers, you got people that are doing carbon sequestration work, planting trees, restoration,
with their hands in the dirt.
With their hands in the dirt, or kind of restoring or rewilding it is a part of that work, right? That is kind of the frontline work, right? And then you also have those that are builders that are helping build up the structures that help these things work, like the food processing, those types of things, right? It could be even like for financial sector, the builders can be people that are building the structures for finance, right? People that are building platforms, people that are building food systems, right? That is kind of this builders category. And then you have people that are a little bit farther out, and we are considered in that category, Seeds DAO. We're the enablers, right? So we help in fields of education, in venture building, acceleration, capital growth. And then we have people that are working in media, right? So there's these ways and levels that we're working with the builders. So we might not be directly involved in a specific bioregion or a specific Earth system, but we're further out, or we're less removed from that physical work, but doesn't mean that we're not a part of the regenerative business economy, right? And so we got to map that out too, because that's a part. It's a lot of the further we go out towards enablers, there's a lot of invisible structure work, right? It's less tangible because you're working with non-visible structures compared to the Earth systems, right, that are at play.
Right. So likewise, like all the areas like that, all these different levels will be incorporating into regenBEN.
Mm-hmm. So these are some of the patterns that we're seeing out there, and we're wanting to show those on regenBEN. But there's any other category that you can think of that you feel is valuable to and adds to the conversation. We also want to add into regenBEN as in a crowdsourced way, right?
Absolutely.
We want
everyone to be represented.
Yeah, we don't want to say that we have not just everybody, but we want to be able to find the categories that are less understood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we need multiple minds crowdsourcing that information to figure out, because this is, the authors that kind of created this nature tech ecosystem is what they're calling it. Raphael Alden and his partners, they're looking at it a certain way, and I like the way that they're looking at it. But it's one part of the way that we're needing to see things. We need to see things in as many ways as we can in order to find the patterns, right? And I think this is a good place to start. And we're adding this along with the bioregions. We also want to know, just like within the current economic systems and business systems that we're operating in, like in the US, we have so many different types of enterprises enterprise structures, like business structures, right? We have for-profit and non-profit structures, like for-profit, you have the C Corp, you have LLCs, you have B Corps, and then on nonprofit, you have, the different tax structures, right? And we want to see what type of patterns exist there as well.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be an interesting space that, we're going to start with a forum that we think is inclusive enough to be a starting point,
mm-hmm.
but it's really going to grow and mature as we get more information from you,
mm-hmm.
right?
So it's a conversation.
It's a conversation. It's not us saying, we know how this needs to be organized. We have some ideas like we've been sharing, but we're not saying that we know exactly how everything is going to look, because it's a collaborative effort.
Yeah. And as this grows, as this map grows, we want to make it more user friendly. So
mm-hmm.
like the idea is that we could create this to be almost its own, like a Wikipedia, essentially, right? Where anybody can come in and add to it. And there's a certain type of common structure where you come in and can add to it, and it exists in more of a commons ground.
Mm-hmm.
But you are going to be held accountable for your editorial process, essentially, right? So everybody will know that you changed this piece of the puzzle, and others can validate if that's something that adds value to the ecosystem, right? And it's going to be led in that kind of crowdsourced way.
Yeah. Another thing, as we get more people into regenBEN and we start to see certain bioregions fill out and things, we'll be adjusting our community accordingly,
mm-hmm.
so that we can have circles within the community that are specifically, obviously these are already regenerative entrepreneurs, right? But a space for their bioregion to connect, or for their industry to connect.
Mm-hmm. So
you're dealing with a highly relevant community space to the movement, to your place in the movement,
mm-hmm.
as opposed to just a broad scale community like Facebook and LinkedIn. Like, how many communities do we have, right? And how effective are they? Can we make it highly relevant to you, your regenerative entrepreneurs that are really the keystone species in our minds of this positive change? We're trying to increase the relevance of this space for you. So if you have other ideas, other needs that you're seeing that this type of space could fill, please don't hesitate to reach out. We've got a million ideas, and we're trying to work with only the ones that we think that are the most effective and helpful for you in this space.
Mm-hmm. So, and it takes us connecting with you as entrepreneurs, Emily and I, but we're just two entrepreneurs ourselves, right? With one organization. It takes us reaching out to you and connecting through the podcast, and those that are listening to the podcast reaching out to other entrepreneurs and connecting. Again, like we said, coming back to that's one of the strong reasons why we're doing this, and use case scenarios is just to be able to connect entrepreneurs together. But you have to go out, and if you're in a bioregion working in your area, help us in mapping that area out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Connect us all together by for example, I'm reaching out to other farmers here in Panama. Right. I'm going to be telling them about regenBEN, getting their inputs and bringing them into the network. And as we do that, we can more fully get a picture of what's happening, right? So let's connect our impact together as entrepreneurs, and then connect that impact to the things that really, truly matter most, the natural resources, figuring out how we can design regenerative enterprises for the future and how that looks like, how our future might look like, changing these systems over. And really that big picture that I was trying to get back, that we really just have no clue of how to really, truly show how we're transitioning from the extractive systems that we're currently in towards more regenerative ones, right? How do we measure that? How do we, and I think a lot of times we just have to measure for ourselves, and that's what we're going to be doing in regenBEN, is we're going to just have you self-identify of like how regenerative you feel your enterprise is. And then we can kind of move from there, right? Because I definitely don't feel like we're 100% regenerative in what we do. And I don't think a lot of us in this space do. We may overestimate a lot of times, but in other areas, we probably underestimate ourselves as the enterprise is moving forward. But what level of transition are we at? Because I don't think we're fully, because no one is, because our entire economy would have to be transitioned away from this extractive one, and a lot of times localized to affect the bioregion, right? And be impacted in the bioregion. So Phil, yeah.
So what can our audience do? What can our listeners do to get involved now to get themselves in regenerative and start interacting in that space?
Yeah. So this is really what we're trying to get people to do. Fill out and join us on the Regenerative Business Economy map, the regenBEN, and be a part of the Seeds of Dow community. And what that looks like is essentially on our website, on the blog post for this, you'll see a link to click on, and it'll take you to a form. You can fill it out. There's just going to be some general information there that will get you into the community that you can start further having the conversations that we're needing to have to figure out what the best categories are, how to better identify the work that you're doing and the categories that you fit in to the greater regenerative economy, right? And into regenBEN, this network, so we can connect you, and you can help connect us and everybody else to each other, right?
And this form, we're going to have it on the blog post, but we're also going to be sharing it through our social channels. For us, that's predominantly Facebook and LinkedIn. We're also going to have snippets from this episode on YouTube, where there will also be a link to the form. We want to make sure the form is out there and available, but you will have to join the community to fill out the form, because the community is where we're holding regenBEN, right? It's in that community space. And if you have any struggles or questions, just fandangoing all of that, if you get an email from us, once you put your email in and you have questions or troubleshoot, you can hit reply those emails, and I will get it and help you through that. In case, so many times we can't hit reply because it's like, do not reply, email, whatever. You can hit reply and we can help you through that. So you can get in the right space so you can be ready to get involved with regenBEN, which we're so excited for.
Yeah. Please flood us with any questions that you have. And we haven't hit the exact tipping point where we have to have someone just to be focused on regenBEN, but that's something that we really do truly want to have, is someone that's working on building this community, this network,
yeah,
and full time, right? And so this could be a extreme help use for so many entrepreneurs out there, and we really truly want to have everybody working on it together with in a crowdsourced way, right?
And we really want to get away from the feeling that a lot of people have in this regenerative movement, where they feel just so alone. Like everyone they talk to, they just don't speak the same language, and they feel really isolated. And from a bird's eye view, we can see very clearly that that is not the case, that you are supported and you are surrounded by other people moving this work forward. And I think Ben is really going to help with that. So no one has to feel alone in this work. You can see what people are doing, how people are collaborating, and really feel like a part of this movement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're not sharing anything that's another piece that we have to disclaimer, I think. We're not sharing anything that isn't readily available to others through the public, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to be sharing email.
No, we don't like sell our emails or
contact information on regenBEN. We're not going to share, but we'll share websites to the enterprise. We'll share information about the entrepreneurs.
Well, and you'll get to choose what you want outward facing. Mm-hmm. If it's a LinkedIn profile, so that people are better able to reach out to you if they find interest. So your website or a LinkedIn profile or something, you'll be able to choose it's outward facing. We're not doing anything with the other information. Really, it's just for organizational purposes on our end. And we need your contact information so we can reach out to you to make sure that you're positioned correctly and you have a link to us and are able to communicate with us if there's any other needs along the way that you need.
Yeah. And well, if you find yourself that you're already on regenBEN, because we're just adding. Yeah,
we're just going to start adding people that we know of and are doing great things.
And others are going to be doing the same. If they run into a business that they feel is doing regenerative work, and there's a part of that form is going to just be other people that found maybe your business. And if you're already on regenBEN and you want to clear up any information on there, mm-hmm. Please reach out to us, fill out that form, become a part of the community. Our emails, our contact information is available. You can reach out to us on social and we can update that information. If you don't want some of that information on there, that's fine. Everything that we are putting on is publicly available. It can be publicly available, publicly found. We're just putting it in a place where we can all see it in a mapped area, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So on that note, thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and head on over and check out that blog post. Remember, that's at seedsofdow.com. Up top, you can see it'll say podcast, and that will be the most recent one if you're listening to today. Otherwise, look for this Regenerative Business Economies episode 112 of the Seeds of Dow podcast, or check us out on LinkedIn or Facebook if you need that link, because they will also be shared there. And we are excited to get everyone together and start putting together this network of regenerative entrepreneur endeavors.
Yeah. All right. So bye for now. Ciao.
Bye. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. It really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us to further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies Network, known as regenBEN, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. regenBEN also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests, register to be a guest on the podcast, and share your own regenerative entrepreneur startup story, or any other suggestion you may have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Now, this may be bye for now, but remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.